What if Pep Guardiola was England manager? How would he set up the team? What would the starting 11 be? What would be the attacking patterns of play with the ball? What would the structure be without the ball? In this video, I'm going to do my best to predict what Guardiola would do if he had this squad of players at his disposal. To help me with that, I'll be using my tactical board, as well as some stills from England's defeat to France in the most recent World Cup. In terms of formation, there's no surprises. If it's a Guardiola team, it's going to be the 3-2-2-3. That's the shape which won City the treble last season. It's the shape he's using this season. It's also the shape that clubs like Liverpool, City and Arsenal have used to great effect this season. We'll have lots of Arsenal, Liverpool and City players in the team, so it makes sense to use it. A couple of ground rules. I'm going to be assuming full fitness, so I will be considering Luke Shaw, for example. I won't be considering players who have not been included in the last few internationals, so no Loftus-Cheek, Barkley, Angel Gomez, Ben White, just to make it clear and fair. Now, there are some non-negotiables, which doesn't matter who the manager is. You know, Pickford is the undisputed #1. John Stones is England's best defender, so obviously he plays. Harry Kane is by far and away our best #9, so obviously he plays. And Declan Rice, realistically, is our only option in defensive midfield. It gets really interesting when we talk about that box midfield, I think, though. It can become a diamond. Why the box? Why does Pep do that? To overload the midfield, numerical superiority. If you dominate the midfield, you tend to dominate the game. You tend to win the game. How can we best create a box midfield? I believe that Pep would be desperate to try to fit, in particular, these three players into one team. Trent, Foden, Bellingham, all incredibly fantastic offensive footballers, all really different in respect of skill set and profile as well. It's really important, if we're looking at this through a Pep lens, that all three of these players start whilst maintaining balance in the side. Foden and Bellingham is easy, because they just go to the 8-10 positions. The question mark for me, through a Guardiola lens, is what do we do with Trent? Now, I've seen a lot of starting 11s which have popped Trent here, in the base of the box, in a double pivot with Rice. The reason why I think that's flawed from a Guardiola perspective is twofold. And it's to do with what Rodri and Stones conversely offered City. It is comfortability when receiving the ball under pressure, and it is also that metronomic quality, that control quality, being a tempo setter. Neither of these players are metronomes. Neither of them are tempo setters. Certainly not for England. Trent is the exact opposite of that. He's not someone you want to be controlling the play with intricate little passes. He's someone who you want to be creating over large distances. Rice is a fantastic defensive midfielder, but he is not Rodri. He's nowhere near as comfortable receiving the ball under pressure, and that was on full display against France. For me, this was the main reason why we didn't win that game. We barely created anything of significance. We had a lot of the ball, but we were mainly just passing it side to side with our centre-backs because our midfielders were either not instructed or were not capable to drop deep, turn, get our team up the pitch. In the rare instances when that did happen, England created. Here's one example, and Stones was orchestrating this whole thing. Go back and watch that game. The amount of pointing and communicating he does, because Rice didn't seem to really know where he was supposed to be standing. He was very static in the game, which was surprising. So Stones there is pointing to Rice, saying, you should be standing here. Rice proceeds to go there. Stones, it's a wonderful outside of the foot pass into the path of Rice, who must here receive the ball, turn, drive forwards. There's no French players behind you. Turn, drive forwards, get your team up the pitch. That's what Stones wanted. That's what Rodri would do. Instead, Rice just plays a simple safe pass back to Maguire. Go see John Stones' reaction. He is visibly annoyed at Rice doing that. But it's probably indicative of what this England midfield is missing and has been missing. That's why I don't think Trent would play there. Don't worry, he will play, but for now we'll just pop him there. So what does this position need? Well, what have I just described there? I've described a tempo setter. I've described someone who is press resistant. We also need someone who ideally is physically imposing enough and really good at winning the duels to not get bullied in midfield. The player I've just described there, from the England perspective of the players we have available, is Rico Lewis. The issue with Rico Lewis, though, is one of physicality and drive in carrying the ball with long, powerful strides. Pep has said himself, if Lewis was a bit taller, had longer legs, he would be one of the best players in the Premier League. And I do tend to agree with that because his technical skill set is wonderful. But this is not the job for him because I think he would get too easily bullied in that midfield. He wouldn't have the drive in his runs when he carries the ball forwards. There is another player who can do this though. And he's very young and very inexperienced and has never played for England before, recently called up. I genuinely believe that Pep would be brave enough to field Kobbie Mainoo at the upcoming Euros. He is literally perfect for a Pep Guardiola team. Ability to receive the ball with his back to play under pressure. A metronome, a tempo setter, a controller. Someone who is calm on the ball. Someone who isn't going to get too excited and play the ball forwards too quickly and lose it. But also someone who is fantastic at winning duels. In fact, this season, he's got a better duel win rate than any other Man United midfielder. He is not defensively frail. That does not introduce any weaknesses off the ball, as we'll get into as well. I think that is a perfect Pep Guardiola midfield based on this pool of players. You've got Mainoo, the metronome. You've got Rice, one of the best defensive midfielders in the world. Foden and Bellingham just speak for themselves. They have been two of the best players in the world this season in those areas of the pitch. The question becomes, what do we do with Trent? Do you pop him in at right wing? Well, that wouldn't be ideal because Saka must play. Saka is our best right winger by a fair margin, so Saka has to play. Realistically, the only option I can see which would still work is to play him right back without the ball and right centre half with it. Now, that doesn't mean he has to stay back and defend, like a Harry Maguire, for example. As with City's wide centre-halves, there is scope to advance, to overlap, to underlap, to get into these half spaces if you're Trent. It's also not even like it isn't optimal to do this. Trent has sometimes operated as a quarterback for Liverpool this season. He's really capable and comfortable, again, if the player's in front of him, of being in this area of the pitch and just spraying passes left, right, and centre, literally finding the runs of his teammates and forcing the opposition back with those ridiculous passes and crosses from range. It's not a hindrance at all to play him there. Moreover, there is a scenario, as City have done this season. City have gone to a 2-3-5 shape at times. You can easily do a 2-3 shape when you have the ball, potentially. Now, would this work against some of the trickier sides? Maybe not. Maybe if there's a specific threat like Mbappe, maybe you play Walker instead of Trent. But for the most part, there is no reason why that wouldn't work. And what it does is it gets our best offensive players, i.e. Foden, Bellingham, Saka, Trent, all into the same team while still maintaining balance. So that's the midfield. I really do think that would work. I do think that would be the best utilization from a Pep Guardiola perspective. And just on balance, you'll notice we haven't really spoken about the left winger yet. Maybe one of the trade-offs with this team is that you can't play a left winger. You can't play Grealish. You can't play Rashford. We need a left back here somewhere. So this player becomes Luke Shaw. Really good crosser of the ball. If he's not available, you play Chilwell, whatever. That's more so to keep the structure, because if you don't have Shaw there, then it means that Foden can't play in the middle, and we need Foden in the middle. We need Bellingham in the middle. In my opinion, we need Mainoo in the middle as well. You can always bring on Rashford if needed. However, for the most part, to ensure the solidity of the shape and to make it actually work from a functional perspective, Shaw must play. That means that the last position is centre-half. Is he going to pick Maguire? When Branthwaite is there, who is a left-footed centre-half, who is really comfortable in those wide channels and is very good on the ball, I think that Guardiola would opt for Branthwaite. Go see his comments on Laporte, for example. Guardiola loves a left-footed defender. I also think that Branthwaite's performances this season shouldn't go unmerited. So that is how I think Guardiola would set England up with the ball. We've got our best defender in defence, Stones. That's another reason why I don't think that Stones would be playing the Stones role in this side. Stones can receive the ball under pressure, no problem, but a metronome, he is not. He is not a controller in the same way that a Rodri is, a Gundogan, a Kovacic, a Kobbie Mainoo. So that's how we set up with the ball. Let's think about just very briefly how we set up without it. So when it comes to transitions, it's really easy for the team to get into its out of possession shape. It's like a 4-4-2, like a 4-4-1-1. Shaw just comes back to left back from left wing. Foden, don't have to worry about any frailties defending the midfield from a Foden perspective. He just goes to there. Mainoo, who we've already discussed, is one of the best dual winners in the Premier League. Saka drops there. and then Bellingham and Kane. You can either have like, Bellingham actually up front as a striker, or just behind as like a second striker, or even deeper into midfield, whatever. But that is an incredibly solid off-ball shape. Any individual defensive frailties of Trent, I believe, is covered by the brilliant defensive work rate of Saka, the fact that Stones is our best centre-half, and also Declan Rice covering that space. So for me, I actually don't think there are any true off-ball weaknesses with this system. The only on-ball one might be the fact that if you've got your defender, i.e. Luke Shaw, out here, it does mean that when he's all the way up here and your team are pushed, if you lose the ball, you're going to be potentially vulnerable on that left-hand side. So it will be a big pressing ask for Foden, who is fantastic at pressing. Mainu, who we've discussed, is really good at winning us duels. And also Branthwaite, who's a very good centre-half. Every single system is going to have a weakness. The fact that this is England's doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't utilise it. We've seen Pep use this system a lot this season with Guardiola there. And just from an attacking patterns of play perspective, this team is really interesting because they can attack you from loads of different angles. You want long shots? We've got long shots. Foden, Bellingham, Saka, Rice, Trent, Kane. You want intricate pocket play? You've got Saka, you've got Foden. You want your defenders to come and overlap? No problem, Trent's there. You want your defenders to create from the half spaces? No problem, because Trent can do that as well. You want your striker to drop deep and then your 8-10s to be the runners off that? No problem. Kane can drop deep and link up the play. Foden and Bellingham, one or both, can make those really aggressive forward runs and crash the box late on. You want your wide players to have threatening crosses? No problem. Luke Shaw is a fantastic crosser of the ball. You want your centre half to be able to create from deep and do brilliant outside of the foot passes which break the lines. John Stones can do that. You need to slow down the game. You need to set the tempo of the game. You've got Kobbie, Mainu there, and Rice, who can easily do that. You've got brilliant space eaters in Rice and Bellingham in case they want to try to target Trent from a defensive standpoint. I think this is why it's important to have Rice and Bellingham on that right-hand side so they can support Trent. You've got physicality in Rice and Bellingham offsetting the potential defensive liability of Trent. Conversely, on the left, sure, you can have a look at Mainu and Foden and say, relative to Rice and Bellingham, they're a little bit frail. Don't worry about it. That's why we've got a defender out here who's obviously more defensively inclined and also an incredibly brilliant, talented, aggressive centre-half in Branthwaite. I think this would be the perfect Guardiola England team. I appreciate and understand that the Mainu call might be a controversial one, but I can't stress enough the importance Guardiola places on having a controller, a metronome in that midfield somewhere. Without Mainu, without someone like him, or Rico Lewis, or whoever, I don't think there is the right balance in that midfield from a Guardiola perspective. I'm not saying that a box midfield, which includes Trent, wouldn't work. I am saying that if you do that, you are going to be ceding a lot of control. You are not going to be great from a press resistance perspective. Your centre-halves are going to struggle to connect with the midfield because, as we've seen at previous tournaments, Rice doesn't seem to be entirely comfortable at doing that. Maybe a season under Arteta at Arsenal, he's a lot more comfortable doing that, but I do think he needs a partner. That's what Mainu is. United were struggling a lot this season in terms of linking their defensive midfield. Mainu comes in, immediately they look so much better, infinitely better. In my opinion, this is what Guardiola would pick if he was England manager, and as a consequence, I think this is how England should set up going forwards. Thank you guys so much for watching. Really hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to the channel for more analysis videos, and I'll catch you guys next time.